Okay, here we go. We are off and running on election day. So that's why you'll be, making sure sounds good. Um, that's why you'll be hearing us talk about sizing. Because many people, when they do sizing, use planning poker. Planning poker involves voting, involves campaigning, involves a lot of dialogue and hopefully healthy discussion. Hey, welcome, Sue. Oh no, the germ exchange. That's a problem. Well, I've got 3 kids, and we had a few of them. Well, I can't. I guess you can't have a few when you have 3 kids. The boys last week were down for the count, so that was a bit of an issue. But they're all better now, which is good. Mama's happy, Daddy's happy. Most importantly, kids are happy, so that's good. Sue, stay healthy, do everything you can. Maybe don't talk in person. Maybe just communicate via Twitch with everybody you know. So, back to the topic. The topic, as you can see down here at the bottom, get out and vote. I've not done that yet. I've been waiting to go after my stream. So after my stream, I'm going to head out and do that. I hope everybody in the U.S. does the same. But as I was thinking about what to start the conversation with today, I started to think about what parallels in the Agile world align with election day. And sizing came to mind. I'm a big fan of planning poker. In fact, I just did it with a couple teams yesterday, a team for the first time, a team that we'd done it a couple times, and it's just getting better and better. But if you've never done planning poker, it's the same as voting. So you talk about your story as a team, you discuss, you ask questions. I like to, before I ask people to vote, and I actually do say vote, or to throw a number, I ask them, do you feel like you have enough information to be able to give a reasonable sizing? Just like I hope you have enough information before you go into that voter's booth and pick candidate A versus candidate B, whichever direction you want to go. That's up to you, but hopefully you have the information. Same thing with our teams. Do you have the information? If not, ask. Start that dialogue. Again, one thing you'll hear from me over and over again is that the beauty of a story, the power of a story, is that it really drives conversation. It drives the necessary conversation and dialogue that's needed to extract the key bits of information that allow your team to execute effectively and efficiently on delivering that piece of value. That doesn't happen if you just write down a few words, you read it to the team, and they say, okay, yeah, that's a 3, and they go on. You do want to drive a healthy amount of dialogue. So that's the key thing for me. I can keep going on that path. I'd be happy to talk about sizing. I get pretty passionate about it because I do believe in the power of the team. But if anybody does have any issues or any questions or any concerns, please put them in the chat. They are out there. Be happy to help. Also, if you have not, and I know many of you have, hit that follow button. There now is the opportunity to subscribe via Twitch Prime or with your own hard-earned cash. Certainly, that would be fantastic, but not anything I'm really asking for. It's something that just came with having 50 followers. Also, bits are a thing. That's a currency within Twitch. So part of my passion around Twitch is exposing people to everything that is out there and that is involved. So there's subscription and there's bits and Twitch Prime and all kinds of interesting things that I'm hoping I can expose people to, and maybe they start to spend a little bit more time on Twitch. Yes, Fire Sue, I am talking about facts to make an effective position. Because one thing that is a little bit different than voting day is that after you cast your vote in a planning poker session as your team's trying to size that next story, if somebody says it's a 1 or somebody says it's a 5, I then ask them to say, why is it a 1? Why is it a 5? That's that key piece of dialogue. Somebody may not remember that key architectural improvement that we did last sprint that enables us to build things faster. Or somebody may not be thinking about how difficult it is to test that thing because we hardly ever touch it. And when we do touch it, it's always a mess. So we need to remember it needs to be 5, maybe 8 points, whatever the appropriate number is, because it is very challenging to test. Yeah, it's so that's one of those things that in those situations, Sue, and I don't know how much of that is sarcasm given today and everything that's happening with all the voting. So if you're not being sarcastic, then that's one of those things that I try and extract out from those conversations. I try and take some of the pieces about how and make sure we're all clear on the what. Yes, the how comes into play when you start to figure out sizing and what's going to take to get it done. But I do like to get back to just the facts of what the problem is and what the problem isn't. Because so oftentimes that's where a lot of the trouble comes from, is that people think it's one thing versus another. In fact, we had that situation yesterday. There was this label of version 1, but nobody really defined what version 1 was. So we had to spend a lot of time because one person on the team thought that version 1 meant everything was done, like everything was done, and then we'd figure out what version 2 was. Whereas another member of the team thought version 1 was just that true MVP, the minimal amount that's needed to get the product shipped and start adding value. And then there was, soon after that, version 2 and version 3 and version 4. They came. Death to Docker. Yeah, Sue, I think that's where you need to try and bring the focus off of the technology stack and make sure everybody has a common understanding of what the problem is. Because engineers will tend to get wrapped around the axle on those details that they like to argue about because it's fun and that's what they know best and whatever. That's a long-standing argument that they may have with one of their teammates, but in reality that has nothing to do with the problem at hand and actually understanding what that problem is and isn't, because so many people just blindly size things without having a clear understanding of what that problem is. Yes, I am channeling Richard. He beat that into my brain way too much, that it is the thing that I keep coming back to. And I used it quite often yesterday in some coaching situations of just what is the problem? And more importantly, what isn't the problem? Because you get into a gold plating type situation where with all the best intentions, engineers are trying to do the right thing. They're trying to maybe be defensive, but potentially overly defensive, and build in protections against a problem that they think may happen someday, but they're not sure. Maybe it happened to them at some point in a previous career, previous product, or previous who knows what. And again, it's always with the best intentions. Like nobody wants to do that extra work just to do the extra work. They're trying to think ahead, but oftentimes that extra work isn't really necessary. So at that point, you have to push the team to trust in the process and know that if there is something that's discovered that is a problem, you're going to ship a new version in the next sprint, or maybe you can do it even faster. So that big, bulky fear of if we don't solve everything right now, we're completely screwed should go out the window. But for many teams that are making a transition from waterfall to agile, they have this large history of we've got to get it all in because we're not going to ship again for another quarter, another 6 months, or maybe another year. And that's a scary proposition because you know you're going to have to deal with the fallout of any things that you may have missed. So that's really what we're trying to do with all of these feedback loops, is try and ensure that we can react quickly, understand and accept the fact that we don't know everything. Although we like to think that we do, we have the capability to respond and react. So that's the big plan. All right, so I see some more folks coming in. If you do have any questions, please post them in the chat. Sue and I will continue to chat, as we always do when she's able to make it. Happy to have Sue here. She's one of the founding members of this Twitch channel. She's been here from the start. She's helped bring more people in, and I appreciate that. So for those of you that are new, please do come in. Please add some questions or any concerns. I'll be happy to help. I'm sure Sue will jump in because that's what Sue does. Sue's always ready to help. We have some other folks that I know are always willing to jump in. So don't be afraid. Ask your question. Hit the follow button. It may look like a heart up at the top. Hit the subscribe button. Do whatever you want. Hit buttons. Some of the buttons may end up actually costing money, so be aware. Hey, it's Dominique's cousin. Welcome back, Mr. Wilkins. Good to have you. One of these days, that joke's going to get old and you're just going to get mad at me, because that's what I do with jokes. I tend to beat them into the ground and say them over and over again. And the worst part is my oldest son has adopted that trait. So now I get in trouble when I do that, and then I get in trouble when he does that. Yeah. So there's that. Okay, cool. So let's talk about... Okay. All right. I'm going to hold you to that then. But I do have a tendency to... It's like erosion, right? It just wears on you over and over again, and eventually there's a breaking point. And hey, I won't be offended, right? So, I've been around this block once or twice. All right, so back to sizing until we have some questions rolling in. One of the biggest initial hurdles is just getting people over the relative point sizing. And is it hours? Is it minutes? Is it days? Is it person stuff? Just person days, person weeks, person whatever. One of the effective approaches that I like to use when starting off with a new team and trying to get them into sizing is I just start lining stories up, and I say which one's the smallest, which one's the biggest. So that smallest one, we're going to make it a 1. And then we start building a gradient or a scale from left to right. This one's the smallest, this one's the biggest, and then try and build clumps, try and find clumps of relatively close sizes. And I build those I stack those stickies on top of each other. So then we start to build those natural sizing. We start to understand what our 1 looks like, and what our 2 looks like, and what our 3 looks like, and then what a 5 looks like. And I actually, yesterday I started talking about, okay, so if the smallest one is a 1, are these next to it, are they about twice as big, 3 times as big, 4 times as big? Again, you just get people out of that mindset of minutes and hours and everything that goes along with that, and just start finding those logical groupings, then start asking questions around those sizes, and it gets people there without even really knowing it's happening. So you can facilitate your way towards a smoother sizing effort with an initial team, because so often those very first sizing sessions, the very first planning focus sessions are just riddled with confusion and fear and doubt about what exactly is our unit of measure. So I just try and take all of that out, and I just look at effort, energy that's required to get it done, and start to clump them together in groups. And eventually things just fall out, and then you just keep referring back to that. So the next time you come back in size and they say, hey, something's a 3, or somebody says it's a 3, others say, okay, maybe it's a 5. That's when I pull out those clumps of stories and say, does it look more like this? This group of 3s, I read the stories back to them. Or does it look more like this group of 5? I start reading those stories back to them, and that helps them narrow in. And as you just keep doing that, people start to build up a mental model of what a 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, wherever you stop your point scale, what those look like. And I like to have those reference stories so that we can always call back in those tough situations about, is it a 3, is it a 5, is it a whatever? And so oftentimes I don't get hung up on, is it a 1, is it a 2, and a 3, because in the long run, the difference between a 2 and a 3 doesn't really matter as much. I like to ensure that we've had that healthy discussion that I talked about around what is it? Do we have a clear understanding of what the problem is and why we're solving the problem? And then if it's a 2 or 3, in the long run, when you're doing 1,000 points a month or 1,000 points a year or whatever, it doesn't really matter if it's a 2 or 3. So don't spend a lot of time trying to micromanage the decision to, is it a 3 versus a 5? Pick one, ask folks if they can go in one direction or the other, and then move on. But only do that once you've driven them to have that healthy dialogue, that healthy conversation that, again, helps everybody on the team understand, yes, I can do this. So for those that may have joined late, as you can see, I've got the get out and vote there on the bottom. For some of our viewers that may not be in the U.S., today is election day. I'm assuming that your news has talked about the fact that it's election day here because our government is doing a lot of interesting things across the world, so it tends to affect lots of people. So this will be an interesting day to see how it affects us in the U.S. and also across the globe. So hopefully everything goes smoothly. Say hi to my wife. We may have can we get a guest appearance? No, she's saying no. Are you sure? You look very fancy today. No, okay. All right, she's going to go eat and then teach. Okay, I thought maybe we would have a special guest appearance. Maybe some other day. Oh, I just got it. Fire Sue said hello. Thank you, Fire Sue. She said hello. She's going down. Okay. So quick question from Sue. Ever worked with teams who didn't want the effort steps to be transparent / job security, old style? Yes. Absolutely. What I do to help things through that approach, I'd be interested. I'll tell. Renee, that's my wife that you said hello. Jamie, she's downstairs. I'll try and do it in a British accent. That'll be terrible. Actually, I have a terrible British accent that I've modeled after the Harry Potter movies, and my kids tell me it's terrible, and I'm very aware that it is terrible. So I won't put you guys through that. I just sound like Hagrid, and I just yell louder in hopes that just erases from memory the terrible accent I'm trying to fake. Okay, so back to Sue's question. Teams that don't want to really be transparent. And this happens a lot, to Sue's point. More senior folks, as folks that have been around a while, the angle that I try and take with them is giving them a break. So oftentimes, those folks that have been holding on to things so tightly that they're the only ones that can do certain things because they're the only ones that know. And they're likely very key issues. They're very key parts of the architecture, very key parts of the problem. So they feel this tremendous weight that they have to get it right, and they can only do that. And then the first thing you hear is, oh, well, if I take the time to explain it to somebody, that'll take so long that it'll take away from the time for me to do the thing that I need to do that's best for the company. When in reality, what I start doing is I start talking to them about, hey, what if you were able to do other things? What if you didn't feel all of this pressure and weight to get everything perfectly right because you were the only one doing it? What if you had a team or teammates helping you? You had a second set of eyes. You had somebody looking over your shoulder, somebody you could have a dialogue with if you weren't sure what the right solution is, that the two of you could play off of each other. So I start going down that path and getting them to imagine a world where things are better for them, where they don't feel like they're the only one that can solve this problem, and then coach them along the way to help share. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take time. It's going to take you months because they've been operating this way for years. And that's how they got in this spot where I'm the only one that can do the code reviews. Or I was at Teradata and there was this thing called Query Builder, and it was the secret sauce. And there was one guy that did it. And it was a super foundational piece of who we were as a product. So we were hamstrung by the fact that there was only one human being that could do that. And this poor guy, super smart, super nice, it consumed him. And while he did a good job, it just wore on him, and it began to slow down the whole product team. So we had to work to extract some of that functionality. But again, the first thing you're going to hear is, oh, it's going to take me too long to explain it. Cool. I get that. It's going to take a long time to explain it. But if we fast forward for a year and we're still doing this and we keep growing from a customer base, or we keep growing teams, we keep adding people on top of this, imagine what your life is going to be like. Then you start to get some glimmers of the future, and people start to get a little nervous, and they start to say, okay, let's figure out how we can work together on that. So oftentimes folks don't want to do that. They often have good intentions of trying to do the right thing. But in the end, in the long run, and I'm always betting on the long run, it makes things harder for them. It makes things harder for the product. It makes things harder for the customers. So you have to force things to be shared. After all, that's what Scrum is all about. That's what Agile is all about. You think about the name Scrum and that group of people pushing together in a unified manner. There wasn't one guy that everybody else was yelling very loudly for. He was going to ultimately lose. And Mr. Wilkins, I'm going to call you Mr. Wilkins because you're related to a Hall of Famer. I feel obligated to refer to you in such a regal manner. So, Mr. Wilkins, I find that if you come at it with that approach, if you come at it with the approach that we got here with only the best intentions, and you try and paint the picture of, I'm here to help you. I'm here to take some of that pressure off of you, to give you a relief, to let you go on a vacation and not feel like you have to be watching your phone 24 hours a day because if that key piece of the product that only you can support goes down, you have to answer the phone. You have to hop on your email. You have to get on the VPN. You have to make a code fix. You have to connect to the servers. All of those things. Whereas historically when I started, I just came in with this super heavy hammer. I was like, nope, you're not doing that. We're switching and you're just going to have to deal with it. Over time, I learned the disruption that approach caused, but also I just spent more time with people in those situations and I began to understand the predicament that they were in. So as long as you come at it, again, one of my themes that you'll see in here is education. You try and educate folks on what the future could look like versus what it is. So approach it from that angle. Number one, you become less threatening. If you've listened to the Metacast, we recently did an episode on how Agile coaches are scary to teams and to engineers because you're driving change. You're pushing people out of their comfortable zone. You're asking them to do things maybe they haven't done before. So you're scary. So now you become less scary. Heroics is often a common problem. But again, I find that those heroics are whether they chose to get there or not. Sometimes those people do it themselves. Other time, mismanagement puts people in a situation where they have someone that they trust. They ask them to work on this piece of code. They don't trust anybody else. They don't invest in growing other engineers to that same level as that other person. So now that person's on an island, not by their own choice, but because of mismanagement, because it was easy to just let that person be the guy or gal that works on that. I'm not going to spend any time and energy trying to teach other folks that because so-and-so has it. That's when you, as a leader, have failed if you allow that to happen. The other thing, Sue, that I do want to talk to about your quick question, I know I've not made it quick, but about your question is that I've found in every transformation I've been a part of that 10 to 15% of the engineers are uncomfortable with the way Agile is asking them to work. They are uncomfortable with the transparency that is required to effectively operate as an engineer in an Agile or Scrum manner. At that point, you need to work with them. You need to work with whoever their manager is and understand that. And an eye-opening moment for me was when I was coaching a team through a transformation. We had an engineer that I viewed as stubborn and just didn't want to transform, didn't want to operate in the new way. And what that person said to me that opened my eyes and changed the direction of how I was approaching everything was, I didn't come here to work like this. This is not how I want to work. In my eyes, I couldn't fathom, because it just makes sense to me. Agile just works in my brain. I couldn't fathom not wanting to work in this approach, not wanting to work in an environment like this. But in the reality, everybody's not me. Not everybody wants to work the same way that I want to work. Not everybody wants to work the same way that you want to work. There are people that want to work in a waterfall manner, that aren't comfortable with the transparency, that aren't comfortable with everything that goes along with that. The quick cycles. That's okay. That is okay. What I do at that point is I help them find a place where they're happy, because they're not going to be happy. And that's the discussion that we ended up having is, we are going agile. This is what's being asked of you. I completely understand if you're telling me you don't want to work in this manner. That's cool. I appreciate it. I'm not going to try and change who you are or who you want to be. So let's work together to find a place where you're going to be happy. Because if you're not here and you're not happy, the team's not going to be happy. You're not going to be happy. Let's find a solution that works for everybody. So at that point, what I do is I turn towards helping them. And I've had engineers that have come and thanked me after they left, while they were leaving, years later, and said, thank you for helping me out of that. I was unsure how to navigate that, because I knew I didn't want to work like that, but it had been decided as an organization that we were going to go agile, but I didn't want to be agile. But those discussions along the way helped them really understand who they wanted to be, the way they wanted to work, what they valued. And they didn't value the same things that I value. They didn't value the transparency and the teamwork. That didn't make them bad. That didn't make them mean. Didn't make them whatever other adjective you want to use. That's who they were. So I stopped trying to force square pegs into round holes and started finding square holes. We're lucky enough to be in a fantastic part of the world where there's a ton of jobs. There's a ton of software companies. There's a ton of companies that need software. And I'd hired enough people. I knew enough recruiters. I knew enough other companies. I knew other companies that worked maybe ways I didn't want to work, but I thought would be appropriate for this person to go work at. So reached out, made a few phone calls, let people find their happy place. And ultimately that's the important part. So the reason I was going with that, Sue, was I just wanted to make sure that it may not work for everybody. You may not be able to transform everybody into the mindset that you naturally have, because maybe they naturally don't like that. Maybe that makes them very uncomfortable. Maybe that's not how they prefer to work. That's okay. Just work with them to recognize that, and then work with them to find a place where they are happy. And that was one of those big life lessons that I learned, because, as I mentioned, and as Sue mentioned, you just can't fathom it, because you work so hard to get away from waterfall. You work so hard to shed those practices that you don't feel are appropriate for you. The key is for you or for your team. So it's one of those where, like, this just doesn't make sense. It's not logical. It's not, whatever they're saying, you want to wrap around it. But in the end, it's a personal choice. So recognizing that with that, helping with them. Okay, Sue, take care of yourself. Have a good stand-up. Tell everyone that we all said hello. And I hope they have a good stand-up. And I hope Tuesday's fantastic for Sue in, what did she call it? The Germ Exchange. That is the American office. Oh, boy. Uh-oh, we got a big one from Biohazard. This is exciting. I feel like you are the king of the long questions, and I like it. Okay, I'm going to take a second and read Biohazard's question. Oh, my goodness. This is one of those age-old problems. And I'm laughing I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at the situation because I've been in this situation so many times. And leadership training, I found, is the most effective part of any agile coaching engagement that I've been a part of, whether it's been me going and getting the training or me providing the training. Because unfortunately, those managers and product owners think they know everything, and in reality, they don't. They think the problem is the team. They haven't taken a moment to sit back and understand the effect. Yeah, that's the problem, Biohazard. That's the problem exactly. And I've done it. I made that mistake. So it's interesting that, so Biohazard, are they coming to you and telling them, or are they just saying, hey, you should sign up and go do this? Because if you have that opportunity to talk to those managers, product owners, then maybe you can extend the offer to them. It's Mr. Wilkins. I want to tread lightly again because you are related to Hall of Famer. It's one of those things where the hardest transformation in Agile is for what Bob Galen, my friend, likes to call the frozen middle. Somebody at the top says, hey, we're going Agile because they read something or they believe it's the right thing to do. There's a million ways that people drive in that direction. A lot of engineers would like to go that because they feel it brings them an opportunity to get away from the death march or poorly communicated requirements or long release cycles, just all of the problems. They want it. Those engineers are begging for it because they see how it can affect their daily lives. The problem is true Agile, truly self-directed teams ask folks in those managers, product owner roles. Product owners, if they're really good product owners, they should already see it. My assessment based on the question that was asked is they aren't really a product owner. They may have a product owner label, but they aren't really operating as a product owner. Their world changes. It becomes less command and control and more self-directed, which sounds good, sounds great, but in reality it gets scary because then you don't have that direct control. You change from a manager to a leader, and when you're a manager, you operate by telling. You say, hey, go build this, build it this way, do it by this date, don't come back until you're done, and it's done right and it's done on time. A leader spends more time educating people on the why and the what and helping maximize effectiveness and efficiency within the team. As I talked earlier, those are longer bets. That's where I'm betting on the long term that if I teach the foundational things to this team, that they will excel on their own. They will accelerate on their own. That's harder. That takes a lot of trust. It induces fear, all of that. So there's a lot of change that goes along with that middle management or those leadership teams that are closest to the teams that ask them to operate in a different way. But if they turn a blind eye, then maybe they don't really know what they're doing is wrong. So Biohazard, the one thing, if you do have full access to all of them and the invitation is open and they just ignore it, what if you just told them, hey, I'm doing Agile leadership training? They don't have to know that the content's the same. That's what I would do. I would hold like a special one-time only Agile leadership training event and invite all of them and say, bring all of your best leaders, and then use the same content. So it might be just a marketing spin that you can put on that will transform their willingness to attend, because now like, ooh, I've custom made it for you guys. I've got something special for you. But they don't necessarily know the content's different. Maybe you sprinkle the word leader or something in there a little bit, but in the end, you still teach them all the same things. You just label it differently. I would be interested to hear if that experiment worked out. Again, that's the approach that I would take, because they, for some reason, believe they don't need it. But in reality, they don't necessarily know what they need, so you can bring it to them. You can just package it nicely for them. And then you'll be in good shape. And that will hopefully help you get going in the right direction. You know, I wonder how many other people take that same approach. I wonder how many leadership training courses or leadership training webinars or classes or anything like that are just the same content that they deliver to everybody else. They just slap another label on it, and people buy into it because it makes them feel differently or whatever. I don't know. It'll just be interesting. I do wonder how much of that is going on. Be interesting. Cool. All right. So let's see. Today is voting day or election day, whichever label you want to put on it. Here in the U.S., I know not everybody's in the U.S. Jamie, my wife was telling me that she read that in England, she thought it was, that there was a 6-week window where political ads were allowed, and then after that they were illegal, because it's been political ads like crazy for us. In fact, my kids were just talking about how happy they're going to be that the election's over, because every ad before the YouTube video that they watch is a campaign ad for somebody. So it has even hit my 9, 12, and 14-year-old children. They see it. In fact, my daughter was talking about that she actually watches one commercial the whole way through because she has it memorized now. So, yeah, Biohazard, I look forward to hearing back in December. And I would bet a decent amount of money that works, that changes the game for them, that they feel like it's for them now instead of for the team, when in reality, they should already feel like that. But you can transform their minds and their hearts. You can make them the leaders you know they can be. They just need you to take them there. So that's exciting. I look forward to hearing about that. Let's talk voting. If you like what you see, hit the follow button. You can subscribe. You can give bits. Subscribe and bits cost money, so certainly not anything I would normally ask you. Actually, you know what? We have merchandise. It's really just Metacast stuff, because I've been at conferences and people ask me for a Metacast t-shirt, which just blows my mind, because I generally, whenever I give a talk, I wear my Metacast t-shirt, and people have been asking for t-shirts, so we're starting to put that out there. As an update, speaking of conferences, Thursday I will be in Orlando speaking at TechWell's conference. I will be streaming at 10 a.m., so normal time. I'll be sure I get the stream up and running a little bit early so everybody gets their notifications in time. I'm going to try and find a good spot that works for everybody and see if we can get some guests on. Try and work that angle, see what I can do on Thursday. Thursday is a bit of a busy day at the conference. A lot of sessions going on. I speak 11:30 or 12 or something like that. So I won't be able to have a terribly long stream, but my normal hour stream should have no problem getting done, so I can get to my talk and get everything ready and deliver a good session for the folks there. So looking forward to that. I'm excited to take this on the road. I've taken it on the road a couple times. Excited to head to Orlando and see what we can get into there. Okay, here we go. Election theme. Interesting question. So I want to hit on a couple of points there. One of the things that I intentionally remove is the lead word. So we don't have team leads or tech leads or front end leads or back end leads. We intentionally remove that. And when I say intentional, what I mean by intentional is I tell the team about it. I talk to them in our meetings, what I used to call a tribe gathering. I talk to them about, we don't have leads, and that's by design. because I want everybody to think like a lead. I want everybody to learn what it means to lead, to understand that, because I truly believe a self-organizing team is made up of a bunch of leaders. That doesn't mean everybody has to be the best at everything. But what I worry about, what I get nervous about, is when there's always the same person asking the question. Sorry, when there's always the same person answering the question. That creates an interesting dynamic where other people stop answering because they know so-and-so is going to answer. So they just start to shut down and they just wait. They don't put themselves out there. They're waiting for Mr. or Mrs. Lead to have the answer because Mr. or Mrs. Lead always has the answer. So I'll just let them do their job and I'll sit here and you know what, they're usually right, so it's easier. I'll just sit here and wait. That's not a healthy, collaborative, dynamic team. So there's a couple approaches I take there as I grab that person that's always answering or maybe was previously declared the lead. And I challenge them with only speaking in questions. And also, never be the first one to answer or never be the first one to talk. So when there becomes a technical problem, again, with the best intentions, they already have the answer in their brain. They feel like the right thing for me to do is to get this team to the proper answer as quickly as possible. So they blurt out the answer. When in reality, that's not the healthy thing. That doesn't build a healthy, strong, vibrant, collaborative team. That solves the immediate problem. It doesn't solve the long-term problem. It doesn't truly get you to a self-organizing, self-directed team. So you have to coach people along the way and help them understand how, again, their healthy intentions, their good intentions, are actually creating problems within the teams. Other people are choosing not to speak up, and they're just waiting for you to have the answer. And that's going to be hard for them. That's going to be really hard for them to transform the way they operate. But it will make a difference. It will work over time. The elected thing, we've gone that route, and what we used what I called team captains, or we actually called them squads because we used Spotify terminology. So we had squad captains. Those squad captains were elected and rotated. They were not the leads. They were the representation, sticking with the governmental theme. They were the representation in all of the cross-squad meetings. So every squad would have their stand-up. Then we had the cross-squad stand-up, where those squad captains would go to a board and tell all the other teams, this is what we're doing. This is what we did. These are the things that are blocking us. That doesn't mean they have all of the answers, but they are the ones out communicating. They are the Senate. They are the House of Representatives. They are those people that go to all of the cross-squad ceremonies and represent. One of the key points of success for that was educating people in those squad captain roles on how to bring information back. Because oftentimes they were junior folks. They'd never been in a role like that. So they would go, they would show up, they would say everything they were supposed to say, and it's like, cool, we're done. But there were important things that they need to bring back with them and educate the rest of the team on. So we had to work hard on educating everybody because everybody ended up in that role at some point on what being a good squad captain looked like. So for your question, I went a couple different directions. One, I stripped the team lead out because I want everybody to operate as a team lead or to think as a team lead and to not wait for somebody else to have an answer, but to jump out with ideas. Do that with intention. Don't just do it and then don't talk about it. Change titles. Talk about it repeatedly so people understand. Because the first time you explain it, people might be shocked and they might not actually listen. They might be having an argument in their brain of, wow, is this a good thing or a bad thing? And they might have stopped listening to you. So talk about it some more. And again and again and again. Any cultural thing like that, you just can never stop talking about. Then I do like the representation model. And again, we called it a squad captain. And it rotated, I think, once a quarter, I'm not exactly sure. Somewhere between a month and a quarter, it would rotate. So those are two leadership elected type roles that we worked on. one of the things that we also wrestle with is front end and back end work. And I'm a big believer in full stack engineers. But that doesn't mean everybody's an expert at everything. So I like to follow the T employee approach. So a T-shaped employee. I believe this was made famous by Valve Software. The theory is that the horizontal, the top of the T, that represents your breadth of skills. So you want someone with a good wide breadth of skills. The tall part of the T, the vertical piece of the T, that's their depth of knowledge. So you want somebody with a broad set of skills, but is world class in one skill, maybe a couple skills. And then what I like to do is I like to ensure that if you have everybody's horizontal pieces of the T's lined up, that their vertical parts of the T's don't stack on top of each other, but are adjacent and supportive. That's what a healthy team looks like to me. There's some good articles by Valve about T-shaped employees that they actually have some pretty cool graphics. So let's see. Yeah, here we go. Let me put this here, see if that... Can I paste an image? We'll find out. All right, well, I just put an image in chat. So check that out. That'll give you a better representation of what I'm trying to talk about. That picture will definitely help. But that's an approach that we take. And again, we want those vertical pieces. We want complementary, vertical, deep knowledge. You don't want a team of all front-end experts. You want a team with front-end expert, back-end expert, database expert, all those things, so they are complementary, but they all can go anywhere and do anything. Not easy to find or build, but when you have it, it's pretty magical. Pretty magical. Cool. Let's see, any questions out there? Because if not, I'm going to wrap it up and go vote. So let me know. Reminder, we have moved to Thursday mornings again. So we are Thursday morning at 10 a.m. Ooh, I got to change it because the time frame, my little scheduler says 9 a.m. Okay, here we go. We got a question. I tell you what you do, invite them in. Say, hey, I'm learning something. And actually one thing that I've done is I'm hosting other channels when I'm not on. So there's a lot of technology education streams out there. Amazon Alexa has some pretty cool stuff out there. Let me see who all I have on there. I know the AWS channel has some really good content that teaches some good things. Let's see here. Twitch's development channel, which has some really cool stuff, and then 2 other channels I found out there that just generally are teaching coding via Twitch. So they are, unlike me, instead of my face being the main thing, they have their IDE up and running, and they're talking through building a product, and they're having a dialogue in chat with the viewers, explaining why they're doing things. Maybe the viewers have different ways and approaches to do the same thing they're doing. So I've always found that interesting and exciting, and I've caught my kids watching that. So yeah, other viewers, I don't know if anybody else out there is watching in an office and people are scratching their head like, dude, what's this guy doing on Twitch? Just promote it, man. I'm cool with that. Just tell them, hey, I'm getting some free training. I'm getting some free Agile coaching. It's going to help you get better too. So, okay, cool. Well, everyone, thanks for tuning in. I will see you Tuesday from hopefully sunny and warm Orlando. Hopefully it's not rainy or anything crazy like that. So as always, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate everybody being here. Appreciate everybody engaging in chat. that's what this is all about. I hope I got all your questions answered well. If not, come back or send me an email, hit me up on my website, Twitter, whatever you need to do, or check out our podcasts, metacast.com. All right, everybody, take care of yourselves. Thank you.